Picture a world where the greenery in your backyard silently does the heavy lifting of costly sprays, synthetic fungicides, and lab-made fertilizers without you ever squeezing a trigger handle. A full 12 months ago, I placed a personal embargo on every single bottle of synthetic treatment in my landscape. The folks next door were convinced I had lost my mind entirely. Yet before the season even turned, my heirloom vegetables were exploding with vitality. My flowering shrubs showed zero signs of sap-sucking invaders, and the dirt beneath my feet felt more alive than it had in an entire generation. So what was the hidden switch? I simply allowed other flora to stand guard. Right now, we are going to walk through 25 extraordinary specimens that will patrol your property like a living, breathing security force. Some of these selections actively banish destructive bugs. Others beckon helpful predators to the feast, and a special handful literally upgrade your ground composition merely by existing. When the final frame fades, you will possess a thorough schematic for a garden that does not rely on a drop of synthetic intervention and practically enforces its own peace. And do not click away before we reach number 17. That particular variety is so formidable that ancient records show it served as an insect deterrent for more than 2 millennia. Let us dig in. Before we unroll the full roster, allow me to clarify the invisible mechanics at play here. These botanical allies operate using 3 primary mechanisms. Number 1, they secrete volatile organic substances into the atmosphere and root zone that the insect world finds utterly intolerable. Is it not remarkable how nature built its own scent-based force field? Number 2, they roll out the welcome mat for airborne mercenaries like the voracious lady beetle and the delicate green lacewing, both of which consume the problematic intruders with a relentless appetite. And number 3, some of these roots penetrate deep into the subsoil, drawing up buried sustenance and altering the earth's structure so that your entire collection becomes inherently robust and sickness-resistant. The real advantage here is permanence. Once you settle these protectors into the dirt, they report for duty every spring thereafter. The majority are hardy perennials, and even the fleeting annuals tend to scatter their progeny so efficiently that you are essentially receiving free reinforcements each calendar year. This philosophy moves far beyond simple avoidance of harsh concoctions. It is about engineering a self-regulating habitat, where the equilibrium is so finely tuned that outbreaks simply cannot gain a foothold. All right, we begin with the undisputed heavyweights. First up, the African and French marigold. We commence with tagetes for a valid reason. These are the undisputed icons of garden folklore. Their subterranean network releases a biochemical compound known as alpha-terthianol, which acts as a lethal deterrent to microscopic soil roundworms that gnaw on delicate root hairs. The petite French hybrids excel particularly at suppressing the root knot variety. Yet there is a layer of knowledge many amateur growers overlook. The pungent aroma that wafts from the foliage above the mulch line also sends a clear eviction notice to whiteflies, the biting mosquito, and specific species of leaf-chomping beetles. Position them at the feet of your towering tomato vines, your sprawling squash hills, and your spicy pepper rows to form an aromatic barricade. The sharper the fragrance, the stronger the shield. Seek out strains named for their deep sunset hues and bold stature for the most robust defense. And here is a seasoned gardener's tactic. Do not prune every spent bloom when autumn frosts approach. Leave a few fading heads to mature and shatter naturally. You will be rewarded with a fresh volunteer army that materializes exactly at the location where you require their services next season without spending a dime. Second in line is the culinary basil. Sweet basil is not confined to the pasta pot. It stands as one of the foremost allies of the slicing tomato. The potent essential oils that perfume its broad leaves send thrips, houseflies, and the persistent mosquito packing. Could there be a more delicious way to wage war on garden nuisances? Furthermore, anecdotal evidence supported by many organic growers hints at a tangible improvement in the surrounding fruit's sweetness and complexity, though consider that merely a delightful dividend beyond the security arrangement. Position these fragrant clumps directly in the gaps between your sprawling tomato cages, or use them as a scented hedge lining the perimeter of your raised salad beds. The critical move is to forbid them from bolting to seed too early. By pinching away the emerging terminal buds with your fingernails, you coerce the plant into a state of perpetual leaf production, thereby ensuring a constant, undiluted discharge of protective vapor into the immediate microclimate. Number 3 is the regal lavender. Lavandula stands as a masterpiece of visual and olfactory splendor, a sensory delight for the caretaker while being utterly repugnant to a broad spectrum of invaders. The high-pitched fragrance, so soothing to human nerves, effectively short-circuits the homing instincts of moths, fleas, houseflies, and the whining mosquito. But behold the duality of purpose woven into this plant's very nature. While it slams the door on the unwanted, it swings the gate wide open for legions of fuzzy bumblebees and winged butterflies, drawing them in by the swarm. English lavender presents the most stalwart constitution and proves reliable across the widest range of growing zones. Place it as a fragrant border where you frequently tread, along walkways, skirting stone patios, or flanking the entry to the productive kitchen beds. The release mechanism is activated by friction. A brush of the knee or a trailing hand releases the oils. A final windfall: dry the harvested wands to fashion linen sachets that will ward off wool-eating larvae in your closets. One plant, a multitude of missions. Fourth on the docket is the cheerful nasturtium. Tropiolum functions as what seasoned horticulturists term a sacrificial lure, and the strategy is nothing short of tactical genius. Soft-bodied aphids harbour a near insatiable craving for the juicy stems of nasturtiums, far more than they covet your prize-winning rose bushes or your expensive vegetable transplants. Thus, the nasturtium willingly throws itself upon the sword, aggregating the pest pressure onto its own shoulders, while your precious specimens go unbothered. Once the enemy has been consolidated into a dense, predictable mob on the nasturtium leaves, the cavalry arrives in the form of beneficial predators seeking an effortless meal of concentrated protein. Plant these vivid bloomers near the drip line of fruit saplings, at the base of vulnerable rose canes, or tucked into the outermost corners of the vegetable allotment. They also double as a culinary asset. The blossoms and rounded leaves deliver a peppery watercress-like bite that elevates a summer salad from mundane to memorable. And rest assured, they will reseed with such abandon that they become a permanent, cost-free fixture in your defensive strategy. Fifth, we examine the autumn chrysanthemum. The common garden mum harbours within its petals a potent organic chemistry known as pyrethrum. This naturally occurring ester forms the active backbone of numerous commercial organic insecticide sprays. It is a nerve toxin to a long list of creepy crawlies, including roaches, ants, ticks, fleas, silverfish, and the dreaded spider mite. The peak concentration resides within the flower heads themselves. Deploy mums as a protective moat around the outer borders of your property, or near foundational entry points to halt pests before they ever infiltrate your sacred green space. Their timing is impeccable. They reserve their floral spectacle for the shortening days of late summer and fall, which coincides precisely with the moment many pests are desperately scouting for hibernation hideaways. The visual payoff is a burst of jewel-toned colour, just as the rest of the garden begins to fade. A word of caution: this chemical doesn't discriminate perfectly. While it decimates pests, direct contact can also harm the bees we cherish. Therefore, strategic placement is paramount. Keep mums on the distant perimeter rather than nestled within the heart of a high-traffic pollinator buffet. Sixth in the lineup is the steadfast rosemary. Salvia rosmarinus is a veritable fortress of aromatic force, emitting a scent cloud that repulses the invasive cabbage white butterfly, the underground carrot rust fly, and the airborne mosquito. The resinous oils clinging to its needle-like foliage are so robust that even a modest-sized shrub can project a sphere of influence across a surprisingly wide radius. Moreover, in regions where winter spares the tender perennials, this plant develops into a substantial, woody shrub that will hold the line for years without demanding anything in return. Situate rosemary near your cole crops, the broccoli, the kale, and the dense cabbages, to confuse and deter the adult moths seeking a nursery for their voracious offspring. The upright, spire-like cultivars make excellent structured borders, while the creeping varieties serve as an aromatic, drought-tolerant ground blanket. For those in more frigid northern zones, keep rosemary container bound so it may retreat indoors when the snow flies. This yields the dual reward of fresh culinary seasoning all winter and a mobile pest deterrent unit ready for deployment where needed. Number 7 belongs to the vibrant petunia. These common bedding flowers are, in reality, nature's own organophosphate replacement dressed up in party clothes. They maintain a hostile perimeter against the asparagus beetle, the leafhopper, the dreaded tomato hornworm, and the squash bug. That is a rather astonishing resume for a flower often dismissed as merely ornamental. Interplant petunias in sweeping drifts between rows of squash or nestled under the lower limbs of tomato plants. They adapt wonderfully to confined root spaces, meaning you can shift potted specimens around as a dynamic mobile barrier wall. The fragrance, which strikes the human nose as mild and sweet, apparently registers on insect antennae as a toxic waste spill warning. They demand abundant sunshine and a regular schedule of deadheading to keep the colour and defence mechanisms operating at peak performance. Is it not worth the minor effort of pinching off spent blooms when the reward is a hornworm-free harvest? 8th is the humble clove of garlic. Allium sativum stands tall as perhaps the most aggressive botanical deterrent in the cultivator's arsenal. The volatile sulfur-based compounds, the same ones that linger on the breath, create an atmospheric barrier that aphids, 2 spotted spider mites, and the cabbage looper find absolutely unbearable. Even the furry ears of browsing rabbits seem to find the scent objectionable enough to seek a milder salad bar elsewhere. You plant the individual cloves in the cooling soil of autumn, and all through the spring growing cycle, they are silently standing sentinel. Weave garlic rows among the thorny canes of roses and beneath the canopy of fruit trees. The pungent signature masks the sweet scent signals that pests use to locate their preferred hosts. Even after you unearth the cured bulbs in high summer, the work does not have to cease. Create a potent homemade foliar spray by macerating leftover cloves in water with a minuscule drop of liquid Castile soap. This becomes your emergency response team for plants under siege. Moreover, garlic possesses formidable antifungal properties that assist in suppressing the spread of powdery mildew and rust spores. One crop yields a harvest for the pantry and an entire season of protection. 9th is the unruly catnip. Nepetocataria produces a terpenoid compound known as nepetalactone, which, in controlled laboratory studies, has demonstrated a repellent efficacy against certain mosquito species that rivals or exceeds synthetic alternatives like DEET. It also sends a strong keep-out signal to flea beetles and squash bugs. This is a plant that grows with an almost invasive zeal, so a word to the wise. Keep it contained within a sunken pot or a dedicated barricaded bed unless you wish for your entire garden to smell vaguely of a feline playground. Situate containers of catnip near the places where you linger in the evening, the patio lounges, the hammock zone, to carve out a mosquito-free bubble. The nectar-rich blooms are a siren call for beneficial wasps and bees, offering a second layer of ecological service. And of course, if you share your home with domestic felines, you will be elevated to hero status. Though you might need to fashion a small wire cage to protect the plant during its youth, lest your ecstatic pet flatten it into a green pancake. 10th on the list, the ornamental allium. These architectural relatives of the common onion and chive, especially those with the massive spherical purple blooms, share the same sulfur-rich genetic toolkit as garlic. They function as a broad-spectrum deterrent against the slimy slug, the ubiquitous aphid, and the carrot fly, all while their dramatic globe-shaped inflorescences act as beacons for native pollinators. The towering varieties like Globemaster command attention in any mixed border and cast a wide net of protection. Meanwhile, the modest clumps of chives, with their edible lavender florets, are ideal for lining the edges of a kitchen plot. And consider the lowly storage onion. Slipping a few of these between rows of carrots confuses the olfactory radar of the carrot fly, who relies entirely on scent to locate her target. Do you see the pattern emerging? These alliums are the bouncers at the door, and they are extremely good at their job. 11th is the graceful dill. Anethum graveolens acts as a neon sign advertising an all-you-can-eat buffet for the specific insects we want on our side. It is a powerful attractant for the ladybug, the parasitic braconid wasp, the hoverfly, and the delicate lacewing. The larvae of these beneficial species are ravenous consumers of soft-bodied pests like aphid colonies and caterpillar eggs. The flat, umbrella-shaped flower heads serve as an ideal landing pad for these tiny winged allies. Intermingle dill throughout the tomato beds and among the tender leaves of lettuce. You must allow a portion of your dill crop to bolt and burst into flower. Yes, even though culinary harvest usually precedes this stage. The yellow umbels are the engine of this defensive strategy. Within a matter of weeks, you will observe a marked increase in the air traffic of predatory insects patrolling the area. Have you noticed that your pest pressure seems lower simply by letting herbs flower? Dill also emits a subtle scent that spider mites dislike, so its presence is a multi-layered shield. 12th is the Old World tansy. Tanacetum vulgare is a plant steeped in ancient cottage garden tradition, and it wields a mighty club against ants, moths, flies, and the persistent mosquito. The clusters of mustard yellow, button-like flowers house chemical compounds that insects recognize as either poisonous or profoundly disagreeable. In centuries past, it was common practice to plant tansy beneath windowsills and by door thresholds to deny pests entry into the dwelling. In the modern garden, situate this robust perennial near the trunks of fruit trees or near cane fruit thickets. Be mindful of its ambition. It travels via underground rhizomes, so give it the room it demands or employ a deep barrier. Handle with caution, as the volatile oils can sometimes provoke a skin reaction on sensitive individuals, so donning gloves is a sensible precaution. While you would not want to add it to a salad, as a sentinel standing guard against insect invasion, tansy is nearly without equal. 13th is the boisterous borage. Borago officinalis, often called starflower, is so beloved by bees that it's sometimes referred to as the bee's knees. But its place on this roster is secured by its talent for repelling both the tomato hornworm and the cabbage looper, while simultaneously drawing in the predatory insects that police the lower levels of the canopy. The symbiotic relationship between borage and tomatoes is particularly well researched and widely celebrated among organic growers. The striking, true blue, star-shaped blossoms are entirely edible and carry a crisp, cucumber-like flavor profile, making them a stunning and conversation-worthy garnish for cold beverages and greens. Borage is a generous self-sour. Plant it once and you are committed for the long haul. Additionally, its coarse, bristly foliage mines minerals from the depths of the subsoil, and as those leaves decay, they deposit that nutrient wealth right at the surface for more shallow-rooted companions to access. Position borage near squash, tomatoes, and strawberry patches for a holistic uplift in garden health. 14th on our tour is the controversial fennel. Phoeniculum vulgare occupies a tricky niche in the guild of companion plants. It has a reputation for allelopathy, meaning it can chemically inhibit the growth of some neighboring vegetables, particularly bush beans and peppers. However, as a pest management tool, it is a shining star. Fennel is a magnet for hoverflies, whose larvae are among the most efficient aphid assassins in the insect kingdom, with a single maggot capable of consuming several hundred aphids during its development. The strategy here is one of spatial segregation. Do not cram fennel into the middle of the vegetable patch. Instead, relegate it to the fringes, the outlying meadow area, or the back of the herb border. From this isolated outpost, it can still broadcast its signals to the beneficial insect world without interfering with your vegetable's performance. Bronze fennel offers a particularly striking aesthetic with its smoky, dark foliage, and it works every bit as hard as the standard green variety. 15th is the lowly but mighty thyme. Thymus vulgaris is a ground-hugging herb that performs double duty as both a living mulch and an aromatic deterrent. It repels the egg-laying whitefly, the larval cabbage worm, and the adult tomato hornworm. The volatile oils achieve maximum potency under the duress of hot, dry conditions, which, by a fortunate coincidence, is the exact same weather pattern that triggers explosive pest population growth. Plant creeping time in the crevices between flagstones, where it releases its scent with every footstep, or use it to underplant roses and broccoli. It is remarkably drought-tolerant once its roots have gripped the soil and persists as an evergreen carpet in all but the harshest winters. The minute blooms are a valuable nectar source for tiny native bees, and you can harvest sprigs for the roasting pan all year long. Could there be a more elegant solution than a weed-suppressing, pest-repelling, and culinary herb all rolled into one tidy package? 16th is the vigorous mint. Mentha is a force to be reckoned with, particularly against ants, aphids, flea beetles, and remarkably, even the occasional rodent. The menthol vapors that rise from the foliage are so potent that they disrupt the scent trails ants depend upon and overwhelm the sensory apparatus of soft-bodied pests. The inherent challenge with mint is its underground ambition. Its root system is an unrelenting colonizer. For this reason, 99% of savvy gardeners confine mint to a container. Why battle a plant when you can simply box it in? Place these potted regiments on patios, at the base of steps, or dot them along the perimeter of the vegetable garden like green sentry boxes. In a pinch, you can steep a handful of leaves in hot water to create a potent, homemade leaf wash that lingers and deters further infestation. With varieties ranging from classic spearmint to decadent chocolate mint, you can tailor the aroma to your liking while reaping the protective benefits. Number 17 is the historic Pyrethrum Daisy. Here we arrive at the ancient warrior I teased in the opening. Tanatitum cinerarii folium, the Dalmatian pellitory, has a lineage of service that stretches back to the armies and storehouses of the Persian Empire. For over 2,000 years, humans have recognized the insecticidal power locked within these simple white daisies. The concentration of pyrethrins within the dried flower heads is astonishingly high, and they deliver a devastating, near-instant knockdown to a wide swath of insects including beetles, leafhoppers, and aphids. You can pulverize the dried blossoms into a fine powder for direct application, or you can simply let the living plants stand in the garden, where they emanate a subtle protective aura. They are hardy perennials that return reliably with a cheerful, innocent look that belies their deadly effect on garden pests. Position them strategically as a ring of protection around plants that have historically suffered the most damage. This is as close to a do-it-yourself, plant-based pesticide factory as the average gardener will ever get. 18th is the rugged yarrow. Achillea millefolium is an indestructible perennial that serves as a beacon for the biological control agents we rely upon: ladybugs, parasitic wasps, and hoverflies. Its broad landing pad-style flower clusters offer an accessible refueling station for these tiny predators. Simultaneously, yarrow's deep and probing root network acts as a dynamic accumulator, drawing up potassium and phosphorus from the mineral soil layers and making them available to the surface ecosystem. This plant thrives in the worst soil you have, the gravelly, nutrient-poor, sun-baked spots where fussier plants would wither and protest. Scatter yarrow along fence lines, within the meadow garden, or as a punctuation mark among the vegetables. Available in a painter's palette of whites, golds, pinks, and fiery reds, it can be integrated into nearly any design scheme. And as an added perk, both the deer and the rabbit turn their noses up at its bitter, fern-like foliage. 19th is the sunny calendula. Calendula officinalis, the pot marigold, serves a role similar to the nasturtium as a trap crop. It lures the aphid population onto its own sticky stems, thereby granting your valuable food crops a respite from attack. The bright, resinous blooms are a favorite gathering spot for hoverflies and the minute parasitic wasps that will subsequently patrol the rest of the garden. Calendula also shows a marked ability to suppress the asparagus beetle. The petals have been used in salves and balms for centuries, and you can harvest them for your own home apothecary while the plant continues its defensive mission. It self-sows with a gentle, reliable hand, ensuring a continuous presence of color and protection. Have you noticed a recurring theme of certain pests targeting specific vegetables? Calendula offers a buffer against several of them, particularly in the asparagus patch and around the base of tomato plants. 20th is the culinary sage. Salvia officinalis is a woody, sub-shrub perennial that exudes a scent despised by the adult cabbage butterfly, the carrot fly, and the tiny jumping flea beetle. The silvery green pebbled texture of the leaves is not just ornamental. It is a reservoir of potent oils that become most volatile under the intense heat of the afternoon sun, precisely when many pests are most active in their search for a meal. Position sage plants near the rows of carrots and among the strawberry mounds. It asks for very little, sharp drainage and a sunny spot. In return, it stands guard for years. The genus offers tremendous variety. Purple-leafed sages and tricolour variegated forms add a layer of visual richness that transcends mere pest deterrence. And when you prune a few sprigs for the roasting chicken, you are actually encouraging the plant to produce more of those pest-repelling, bushy growth tips. 21st is the scented geranium. Let us be precise. We are speaking of pelargonium, not the annual zonal geraniums. These are the scented leaf varieties that release a perfume reminiscent of lemon, rose, peppermint, or even nutmeg when brushed against. This fragrant disorientation confuses insect olfactory systems, effectively masking the scent signature of your more vulnerable plants. The lemon-scented cultivars are particularly adept at carving out mosquito-free zones around seating areas. The rose-scented types have shown efficacy against the adult Japanese beetle. Position these potted plants on patios and tuck them into the gaps between rose bushes. Because the aromatic glands are housed within the foliage, you must interact with the plant. Brush it, rustle it, to deploy the protective vapor. They are tender perennials in most of North America, but they overwinter with remarkable ease on a sunny windowsill indoors, and they strike readily from cuttings, allowing you to expand your aromatic army year after year. 22nd is the versatile coriander/cilantro. Coriandrum sativum offers a dynamic two-stage defense. The leafy, pungent stage known as cilantro repels aphids and spider mites through its distinct aroma. But the real magic unfolds when the plant bolts, sending up the delicate, lacy white umbels of flowers that signal the arrival of the seed we call coriander. These flowers are an irresistible lure for parasitic wasps and lacewings. To maximize this benefit, practice succession planting. Sow a fresh patch of seed every few weeks. This ensures that while some plants are providing leaves for the kitchen, others are entering the blooming stage and summoning the pest control squadron. Position these flowering cilantro plants near those crops that seem to be aphid magnets, and watch as nature redresses the balance. It is a remarkably efficient use of square footage, providing both culinary ingredients and critical habitat support for beneficial insects. 23rd is the bitter wormwood. Artemisia absinthium is among the most bitter plants in the entire plant kingdom, and that intense chemical profile translates directly into a serious perimeter defense. It repels the egg-laying of moths, the presence of flies, and even deters the slow, destructive march of slugs and snails. The striking, silvery filigree foliage makes it an exceptional accent plant for the dry border. However, due to its potent root exudates, which can stunt the growth of nearby edibles, it is best deployed as a standalone barrier or border plant, not as an interplanting among vegetables. You can also harvest the foliage to create a strong-smelling, bitter tea used as a contact repellent spray. Keep this one out of reach of curious children and pets, as the thujone content is not suitable for internal consumption. But as a living fence against unwanted invaders, wormwood stands alone in its potency. 24th is the flowering hyssop. Hyssopus officinalis is a semi-evergreen subshrub crowned with dense spikes of intense blue flowers that are a veritable beacon for honeybees and the aphid-devouring hoverfly. Simultaneously, the aromatic profile repels the cabbage moth and the flea beetle, making it an invaluable companion for the entire brassica family: kale, broccoli, and Brussels sprouts. The essential oils deter the pests, while the blossoms provide the payroll for the beneficial workforce. Hyssop is tolerant of drought and neglect, and it puts on a floral display that lasts for several weeks in the height of summer. The flowers themselves are edible and make a stunning, slightly minty garnish, while the leaves can be steeped for a medicinal tea. Use it as a low, flowering hedge along the edge of the vegetable plot, or weave it through the perennial border. It matures gracefully into a tidy, reliable shrub. 25th and finally, the dependable chives. Allium schoenoprasum. We bookend this list with another member of the onion tribe because of its sheer ease and versatility. Chives repel the Japanese beetle, the aphid, and the carrot fly with the same sulfurous intensity as their larger cousins. The fluffy, purple pom-pom flowers are an early season magnet for bumblebees and other native pollinators. Both the hollow leaves and the blossoms are edible. Plant chives as a neat, grassy edging around the entire vegetable garden. Tuck them into pots by the kitchen door for easy snipping, or scatter them among the rose bed to lower aphid pressure. They are clump-forming perennials that are, for all practical purposes, indestructible. They ask for nothing but sunshine and drainage, and they give back year after year. Every few springs, you can dig and divide the clumps, expanding your reach across the property. Is there any reason not to include this plant in every single garden? It is the perfect entry point for anyone hesitant to begin the journey toward a chemical-free sanctuary. So there stands the complete roster. 25 botanical defenders ready to shield your garden without the use of a single synthetic aerosol can. But let me offer a dose of pragmatic wisdom. You do not need to acquire and install all 25 before the weekend is over. Start with a modest patrol of 5 or 6 that directly confront the specific demons plaguing your backyard. Here is the actionable, tiered approach for implementation. Step 1. Perform an honest reconnaissance of the enemy's primary forces. Are you swamped by aphids? Then prioritize a phalanx of marigolds, nasturtiums, and chives. Are your cabbages being reduced to lace? Then deploy dill, borage, and sage as your first line of defense. Do mosquitoes make your evenings unbearable? Then surround your relaxation zones with lavender, potted catnip, and rosemary. Step 2. Design with vertical stratification in mind. Use the creeping types like thyme as a protective living mulch at soil level. Fill the middle canopy with bushy basils and bright marigolds. Then anchor the background and borders with towering fennel, tansy, and alliums. This creates a 3-dimensional defensive net that catches invaders at every height. Step 3. Ensure you have included at least a handful of plants dedicated to attracting the mercenaries, the predatory bugs. Those beneficial insects need more than just prey. They need nectar and pollen to sustain their adult lives. Dill, fennel, yarrow, and calendula are my non-negotiable choices for keeping the good guys well-fed and loyal to your cause. Step 4. Do not neglect visual appeal. Every single plant on this list is aesthetically pleasing in its own right. A garden should be a place of beauty as well as function. Layer colors, contrast textures, and vary heights. The goal is a landscape that is a joy to inhabit, even while it wages a silent, invisible war on your behalf. And finally, step 5. Practice the virtue of patience. An ecosystem does not achieve equilibrium overnight. It takes a cycle or two for the predator-prey dynamics to stabilize. In that inaugural season, you might still witness some nibbling, but you will also notice an uptick in airborne patrols. By the second rotation around the sun, the balance will shift dramatically in your favor. By the third, you will look back and genuinely wonder why you ever bothered with the hose end sprayer and the safety mask in the first place. If this guide has illuminated a path forward for your own piece of earth, I would ask that you take a moment to press the thumbs up button and join this community of natural growers by subscribing to my channel. In the comments section just below, let me know which of these protective plants you are most excited to trial this season, or share your own hard-won wisdom about companion planting. I read every single note, and the collective knowledge shared there is a treasure. Until our paths cross again in the next video, I encourage you to step outside, look at your garden as a living, breathing system, and start building your natural defense network. Your plants will respond with vigor, your bank account will appreciate the reprieve from expensive inputs, and the bees will certainly hum their approval. Here is to a season of happy, healthy, and self-protecting gardening. I will see you in the soil.